Hello everyone, and welcome to the Commander's Forge. I am your host, Andy Bentley, and the Commander's Forge, as always, is an area for me to talk about magic, commander, community, and anything in between, the way that I enjoy it or the way that I view it. Now, I have to start off today with thanking 3 people. The first one is Dustin Ivy, followed by Christina McNichol, and finally Phil DeLuca, for all joining my Patreon. I honestly cannot express how grateful I am for you joining me in an effort to grow this podcast beyond what I initially thought it could ever be. Now, there's something I wanted to talk about, but it just didn't feel right. And it's one of those things where I mulled over the idea several times for a week, and eventually it just kind of faded, and I wasn't sure what I was going to talk about this week. But then I remembered I've been looking at building a CEDH deck for no purpose other than I know people that play competitive EDH, and the games are honestly a lot of fun to watch. And for me to have a chance of ever playing in one of those games, I need to have a deck that's built for competitive. And I had been mulling over my options, and then I kind of settled on mono white. And don't get me wrong, it's going to be a very mean mono white deck, but it really kind of taxed my understanding of deck building, because there's an idea I want to go with, but I'm not quite sure how it translates to competitive. So the main goal of the deck is going to be play Thalia, Guardian of Thraben, which is a 2-mana, 2/1 human soldier that says non-creature spells cost 1 more to cast. And then from there, we're going to stack some other stuff on her. Basically, we want to make her hard to kill, hard to target, and the goal is to one-shot everybody at the table with commander damage. Unfortunately, that means I would have to do it over 3 turns, because as far as I know, there aren't a whole lot of take an extra combat step spells in mono white. But again, I'm going to try to figure out this list. I have no idea if it's going to work or when it's going to be fully put together. I just really want to try something different, you know? Strixhaven didn't really scratch my itch, so I'm looking for something that will. And given how much I've actually really enjoyed playing Linden, I thought, let's do something else with mono white. Let's show them that mono white doesn't necessarily have to be bad. And it's just like, I'm looking at this pile of cards, and sure, there's a lot of artifacts in there, but we got stuff like Blessed Alliance, Secure the Wastes, All That Glitters, Authority of the Consuls, Norn's Annex, Hushring Griff, Spirit of the Labyrinth. We want to slow our opponents down and punish them for trying to do anything broken. It's going to be an interesting concept, and after a quick break, we're going to break down some of the strategies that I'm looking to include in this list. So we'll be right back.
Hi. If you haven't heard about Anchor, let me tell you some of the reasons why I started using it. For one, it's free. There's no subscription fee. You don't have to pay for anything. Second, it gives you all of the editing software you need for everything you're going to do. Beyond that, it helps distribute your podcast to so many different places, including Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts. It's amazing. Not only that, but they offer to sponsor you. Right there. That's it. Just by recording podcasts, they will pay you based on the number of listens it gets. It brings everything you need into one place. And if you want to try it out, you can download their app, or you can go to anchor.fm to get started. Now back to the episode.
Alright, jumping back into it. I want to preface this next part with, I'm not really using any online sources to help me build this deck. I'm still trying to stay kind of true to the fact that I am a brewer and I like to test things and see how they work. But the first thing that I thought about with this type of deck is I need to slow my opponents down. And that's going to end up being, I think, one of the main parts of the deck. And that starts with stuff like Dampening Sphere, which is a 2-mana artifact. It says, if a land is tapped for 2 or more mana, it produces a colorless instead of any type of mana or amount. And each spell a player casts costs 1 more to cast for each other spell that player has cast this turn. So if we have Thalia and Dampening Sphere out, they can't produce tons of mana. And if they try to cast an artifact, the first one they cast costs 1 more. The next one costs 2 more. And then 3 more. And 4 more. It starts stacking up. We have the Godpharaoh statue, which is a 6-mana artifact. But spells your opponents cast cost 2 more to cast. At the beginning of your end step, each opponent loses 1 life. Deafening Silence is an enchantment for a single white that says each player can't cast more than 1 non-creature spell a turn. Thalia Heretic Cathar is 3 mana, 2 and a white for a 3/2 first strike that says creatures and non-basic lands enter the battlefield tapped that our opponents control. And in that same vein, we have Authority at the Consoles, which is a single white enchantment that says creatures your opponents control enter the battlefield tapped. And whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your opponent's control, you gain 1 life. So those are, again, just ways that we're trying to slow everybody down in that way. But we're also running Draenith Magistrate, which is a 2-mana 1/3 that says your opponents can't cast spells from anywhere other than their hands. Not only does this shut down them being able to cast their commanders, but they can't cast stuff out of graveyards. They can't cast stuff off the top of their libraries. in this, we're going to make them play a fair game of Magic. And that continues with stuff like Alms Collector, which is a 3/4 for 3 and a white. It has flash, and if an opponent would draw 2 or more cards, instead you and that opponent each draw a card. Or Containment Priest, which is a 2 mana 2/2 with flash that says if a non-token creature would enter the battlefield and it wasn't cast, exile it instead. Or we can go with stuff like Hushwing Griff, which is a 3 mana 2/1 with flash and flying, and creatures entering the battlefield don't cause abilities to trigger. Or Tocatli Honor Guard, which is a 2 mana 1/3 that says creatures entering the battlefield don't cause abilities to trigger. Or stuff like Spirit of the Labyrinth, which is a 2 mana 3/1 that says each player can't draw more than 1 card a turn. Aven Mind Sensor is a 3 mana 2/1 with flash and flying that says if an opponent would search a library, they search the top 4 cards of that library instead. Redain, God of the Worthy, is 2 and a white for a 2/3 with flying and vigilance. Snowlands your opponent's control enter the battlefield tap. Don't know how relevant that will be, but non-creature spells your opponents cast with a converted mana cost of 4 or greater cost 2 more to cast. That's pretty stacksy if you ask me. And on the back, it is Valkmira, Protector Shield, for 3 and a white. It's a legendary artifact that says if in a source an opponent controls would deal damage to you, or a permanent you control, you prevent 1 of that damage. And whenever you or another permanent you control becomes the target of a spell or ability an opponent controls, counter that spell or ability unless its controller pays 1. Honestly, I think the front side is better for this. But again, it's all about slowing everybody down. We have a one-shot that can do that with Silence that says our opponents can't cast spells this turn. Or we have the OG Winter Orb, 2 for an artifact that says as long as it's untapped, players can't untap more than 1 land during their untap steps. And we also have a way to get around that. We are running Inspiring Statuary. It's a 3 mana artifact that says non-artifact spells you cast have Improvise. That means that we can tap artifacts to pay for 1 of them. And we couple that with some powerful instance like Secure the Waste, which is X and white, to put X white warrior creature tokens onto the battlefield. It's going to be a fun concept. For me, anyway. It's not going to win me a lot of favor with other people, but yeah. Now, in addition to slowing everyone down, we want to go fast. And by fast, I mean we want to go fast on turn 1. So, in addition to the bevy of 1-drops we're going to be running, we also need that fast mana. Things like Mox Amber, which is 0 for a legendary artifact that says tap, add 1 mana of any color among legendary creatures and planeswalkers you control. Doesn't work unless we have one of them on the field, but again, it's one of those we can get it down early. It's great. On top of that, we have Mana Vault, Mana Crypt, and Soul Ring. So Mana Vault is 1 mana artifact. You can tap to add 3 colorless mana to your mana pool. Doesn't untap normally during your untap phase. To untap it, you have to pay 4 mana. And if it's tapped during your upkeep, it does 1 damage to you. Mana Crypt is 0 for an artifact that says at the beginning of your upkeep, you flip a coin. If you lose the flip, it does 3 damage to you, but it taps for 2 mana. And then Soul Ring is good old Soul Ring. It's 1 mana for an artifact that taps for 2 mana. The main thing we would like in our hand on turn 1 is Mana Crypt. Because if we hit Mana Crypt and a land, we could potentially play another 1-drop and our commander and then start slowing people down. Now, the thing is, we're going to be taxing people. And a lot of those taxes are also going to hit us. So it's kind of important that we have a way to circumvent some of our other costs. Namely, equip costs. Because, well, we want to run a very large and in charge Thalia into our opponents. So this brings in our suite of let's either not pay for it or let's make it really cheap. First up, we have Sigarda's Aid, which is an enchantment for a single white that says you can cast aura and equipment spells as though they had flash. And whenever an equipment enters the battlefield under your control, you may attach it to target creature you control. So we might still get taxed on playing it, but as soon as we cast it, it's going to equip. And that is the same with Hammer of Nizan, which is a 4-mana equipment that says Hammer of Nizan, or another equipment enters the battlefield under your control, you may attach that equipment to target creature you control. That creature has +2/+0 and indestructible. Next up we have Arden, the Intrepid Archaeologist. He is a 3-mana 2/2. And he says, at the beginning of combat on your turn, you may attach any number of auras and or equipment you control to target permanent or player. So if Thalia had been removed, at some point we can replay Thalia and then just dump everything back onto her. In the same vein, we have a Pure Steel Paladin, which is a 2-mana, which is 2 white mana, 2/2, and whenever an equipment enters the battlefield under your control, you may draw a card. But its Metalcraft ability is equipment you control have equip 0 as long as you control 3 or more artifacts. Which we will basically always have more than 3 artifacts. In that same vein, we have Leon and Shikari, which is you may play equip abilities anytime you could play an instant. So if you have the 2 of them out, we can start shuffling equipment between creatures mid-combat. Next up we have Halvar, the God of Battle, which is 2 white, 4/4. Creatures you control that are enchanted or equipped have double strike. And at the beginning of each combat, you may attach target or equipment attached to a creature you control to target creature you control. So he can, at the beginning of combat, move stuff around. But he also has a backside. Sword of the Realms is 1 and a white for an equipment that says equipped creature gets +2/+0 and has vigilance. And whenever the equipped creature dies, return it to its owner's hand. So, with this out, Halvar's not a bad side, but I feel like 9 times out of 10 we're going to play it as the equipment, as just a little added protection. And the last in kind of our, we're going to cheat some mana costs, we're running our Stoneforge Mystic, which is 1 and a white for a 1/2. When it enters the battlefield, you search your library for an equipment card, reveal it, put it in your hand, then shuffle your library. And then for 1 and a white, you can tap Stoneforge Mystic to put an equipment card from your hand onto the battlefield. So that's all geared towards playing Thalia, equipping Thalia, smashing face with Thalia. Now, as for our suite of equipment, it's I feel like it's a fairly straightforward list of stuff. I mean, sure, it's got like the one meme card. And by that I mean the Colossus Hammer, which is a single mana for an equipment that says equipped creature gets +10/+10 and loses flying, but its equip cost is 8. So the meme is you only ever play this when you have something that's going to allow it to either auto-equip or that you can move it for free onto Thalia, but +10/+10 makes her 12 power, which means all you gotta do is find a way to give her double strike. But yeah, so swords. Let's talk about swords. First up, we have Blackblade Reforged. 2 mana artifact that says equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each land you control. You can equip a legendary creature for 3, or it has an equip for 7. Sword of the Animist is 2 mana for an equipment. Equipped creature gets +1/+1, and whenever it attacks, you search your library for a basic land card, put it on the battlefield tap, then shuffle your library. It equips for 2. Then there's the Sword of Vengeance, which is 3 mana. Equipped creature gets +2/+0, First Strike, Vigilance, Trample, and Haste, and equips for 3. And then we get into the swords that you all expected when I said that we're running swords. First up, we have Sword of Light and Shadow. 3 mana equipment. Equipped creature gets +2/+2 protection from white and black. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you gain 3 life, and you may return up to 1 target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. Equips for 2. Sword of Truth and Justice. This is a 3 mana artifact. Equipped creature gets +2/+2 protection from white and blue, and whenever a equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, you put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control, and then proliferate. Also equips for 2. Followed by Sword of Sinew and Steel, 3 mana. Equipped creature gets +2/+2 protection from black and red. Whenever a equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, destroy up to 1 target planeswalker and up to 1 target artifact. Equips for 2. The thing with this is you do not have to destroy a planeswalker or an artifact that player controls, which I only noticed very recently when I was playing the card. Next up, we have Sword of Body and Mind. 3 mana, +2/+2 protection from green and blue. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you put a 2/2 green wolf creature token onto the battlefield. That player puts the top 10 cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard, and equips for 2. The funny thing with this in this deck is we're running enough graveyard hate that it shouldn't be fueling anybody. Then we have the Sword of Fire and Ice, 3 mana, +2/+2 protection from red and blue. Whenever a equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, Sword of Fire and Ice deals 2 damage to target creature or player, and I draw a card. Equips for 2. Sword of War and Peace, 3 mana, +2/+2 protection from red and white. Whenever a equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, Sword of War and Peace deals damage to that player equal to the number of cards in his or her hand, and you gain 1 life for each card in your hand. It equips for 2. It's honestly one of our least impactful swords, but I have the foily pretty invention one, so I'm gonna run it. And of course our last sword, the Sword of Feast and Famine. 3 mana, +2/+2 protection from black and green. When it deals combat damage to a player, that player discards a card, and I untap all lands I control. Equips for 2. With the extra taxing we're going to be doing, the ability to untap our lands and deploy more is going to be very helpful. Then we have just like some of our more open-ended, and by that I mean some of the protection our equipment we're running. Things like Lightning Greaves, 2 mana equipment. Equipped creature has haste and shroud. Equips for 0. Swiftfoot Boots is 2. Equipped creature has hexproof and haste. Equips for 1. Champion's Helm, 3 mana. Equipped creature gets +2/+2, and as long as it's legendary, it has hexproof. That equips for 1. So, I have this whole plan for the deck, and I need to sit down and kind of finalize, what all I want in the deck, and, full warning, this deck will have proxies in it, because I'm not looking to spend a ton of money right now. I've got other issues and things I need to worry about in the meantime. But that's kind of the deck in a nutshell. We're not doing super tricksy stuff. We're just trying to slow everyone else down and go fast. Alright. That will bring us towards the end of the episode. If you are enjoying the content that I put out, you can go to patreon.com/CommandersForge. That link will be in the description. And as always, if you are watching this on YouTube, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell for notifications, and I will see you next time. That brings us to the end of the podcast. I would like to thank Nate and Erica Jacobs for designing my logo, and Cody Mulpey and Ian Foss for allowing me to use a sample of music from their band The Crypt. The podcast can be found on YouTube by searching Commander's Forge. The podcast is Commander's Forge, that is CMDR_Forge on Twitter. I can be found on Twitter at BentzMr, that is BENTZMR. Thank you for listening. I'll see you next time, and until then, here's to fun games and sick plays.